In a peaceful and tranquil Isle of Portland in Dorset, you would not expect to find one of English history's worst spy leaks or one of the greatest acts of treachery committed against the nation. The arrest, trial and conviction in 1961 of 5 Soviet spies, 3 of whom were illegally living in London under deep cover, marked a story that captivated and also angered the nation in the early 1960s. It is one of the most famous uses of illegal resident spies who operate in a foreign country without the cover of their embassy. Today, we look at the Portland spy ring, one of England's worst spy leaks. Remember, if you do enjoy these videos, to support the channel, please subscribe. In 1959, the CIA received letters from a mole codenamed Sniper. Sniper stated that information was reaching the Soviets from the Admiralty Underwater Weapons Establishment and from HMS Osprey in Portland, Dorset, in England. Here, the Royal Navy were testing new and up-to-date equipment for underwater warfare. These letters were then passed on to MI5, Britain's domestic counterintelligence and security service. The spy ring had even been smuggling copies of top-secret British naval documents containing details on the UK's nuclear submarine programme. The top-secret British documents that the spies were sharing with the Soviets included designs for HMS Resolution, Britain's first submarine equipped with nuclear ballistic missiles which had been developed in Portland. Suspicion fell on a man called Harry Houghton, a former sailor who was a civil service clerk at the base. Born in Lincoln, England, he left school to join the Royal Navy and by the end of World War II was a master at arms. After the war, he was attached to the staff of the naval attachment of the British Embassy in Poland. Here he dabbled in the black market, beginning by trading coffee but moving on to medical drugs. This made him money and led him to the attention of the Polish Secret Service. In 1952, Houghton was ordered home. Following a divorce, he was appointed to the Admiralty Underwater Weapons Establishment in Portland in the 1950s. Suspicion fell on Houghton as he had just bought his 4th car and a house. He was also a heavy drinker who would generously buy rounds for people at the local pubs. Houghton's way of living roused suspicion as his lavish lifestyle and expenses were far beyond his rather average salary. MI5 then placed Houghton under surveillance and they began to watch him and his mistress Ethel G. Ethel was a filing clerk who handled some documents that even Harry didn't have access to. They both worked at the Naval Base in Portland. Often the couple would go to London and would meet with a man who identified as Gordon Lonsdale and was a Canadian businessman. This mysterious man would actually be the Soviet intelligence officer Conor Molody, the mastermind of the Portland spy ring. Lonsdale himself dealt in jukeboxes and bubblegum machines. He often travelled abroad and was considered a ladies' man. MI5, once the link was established, placed him under discreet surveillance. It was found that Lonsdale often went to 45 Cranley Drive in Ruislip in Middlesex. Here, he would meet with a bookseller Peter Kroger and his wife Helen in their home. This couple were then also placed under close surveillance. On Saturday the 7th of January 1961, Houghton, G and Lonsdale were meeting in London when they were arrested by Special Branch as MI5 officers are not authorised to make arrests. G's shopping bag contained huge amounts of film and photographs of classified material, including details on HMS Dreadnought, Britain's first nuclear submarine, as well as many other secrets. Detective Superintendent George Gordon Smith, who carried out the arrests, then went to Ruislip to see the Krogers. Claiming to be investigating a local burglary, they gained entry to the house. Once inside, they identified themselves as Special Branch officers and said that the Krogers had to accompany them to Scotland Yard for questioning. Before leaving, Mrs. Kroger asked to be allowed to stoke up the boiler. Before she could, Smith insisted on checking her handbag. This was found to contain microdots, the photographic reduction of documents in order to make them small enough to be smuggled easier. Smith had suspected correctly Mrs. Kroger's intention to destroy these microdots and other secrets. The microdots found at Kroger's home were letters sent between Lonsdale and his wife, who lived in the USSR with their children. These letters included information on money matters and how their children were doing at school. Kroger had used the print in his antique books to hold the microdots and to smuggle them between Britain and the Soviet Union. These would have included the secrets obtained by Houghton and G from the Portland Naval Base. Inside the Kroger house was a dwelling full of spying equipment. This included large sums of money, photographic material, code pads for coding messages, and a long-range radio transmitter and receiver for communicating with Moscow. It took several days for all this equipment to be found, and other items including fake passports were also found. Over the years, subsequent renovations have taken place in the house of the Krogers, and even more radio transmission equipment has been found. Large amounts of money were also found at the homes of Houghton, G and Lonsdale. 2 days after their arrest, all 5 were charged with espionage. G and the Krogers protested their innocence. Houghton, however, tried to turn Queen's evidence, willing to speak the secrets he knew for immunity from prosecution. This request was denied. Lonsdale would remain completely silent. Their trial began on Monday the 13th of March, 1961. Whilst giving evidence, G claimed that all she knew was Lonsdale was Alex Johnson, an American naval commander who wanted to know how the British were handling information passed on by the United States. She said that she had no idea that information was actually going to the Russians. She also claimed that she had gone along for love, as Houghton was the love of her life. Houghton claimed that he had been the subject of threats from mystery men, and was subject to beatings by thugs if he failed to pass on information. These men, he said, also made threats involving his mistress G, and also his ex-wife. He also claimed too that he only knew Lonsdale as Alex Johnson whilst defending G. Neither Lonsdale or the Krogers took the stand, but read statements out in court. In this, Lonsdale took responsibility, claiming that the Krogers were innocent. He said that he often looked after their house while they were away, and had used it to hide his spying equipment in without them knowing. Peter and Helen Kroger would then back up this claim, saying that Peter was simply a bookseller and Helen a housewife. However, the couple could not explain why fake Canadian passports with their photos inside were found inside the house, which would have been used in a possible getaway. The jury would take no sympathy on any of the defendants and returned verdicts of guilty for all the accused. Superintendent Smith, when taking the stand, announced that through their fingerprints, the Krogers had been identified as Morris and Lona Cohen, renowned spies who had worked previously in the United States. Lonsdale throughout his trial remained a man of mystery, in spite of extensive research conducted by MI5 and the FBI. They were convinced he was in fact a Russian and a member of the KGB, but his past could only be traced to 1954, when he first appeared in Canada. In terms of sentencing, Houghton and G were sentenced to 15 years in prison. Upon their release in 1970, they married the following year. The Krogers, or Cohens, were sentenced to 20 years. In 1969, they were exchanged for the British citizen Gerald Brooke, who had been arrested by the Soviets, and the Soviets then confirmed that these two were in fact spies. Lonsdale was the mastermind and was sentenced to 25 years. However, in 1964, was too exchanged for a British spy, Greville Wynne, who had been arrested in the Soviet Union. Lonsdale's true identity would then be revealed as Conan Molody. Conan Molody would then write a book called Spy, the Memoirs of Gordon Lonsdale in 1965. In this, he claimed that the Krogers were innocent. Suspiciously, Molody would die during a mushroom picking expedition in 1970 at the age of 48. Retired KGB official Leonid Kolosov, Molody's childhood friend, raised suspicion around this, saying that Molody was in fact healthy when he died. He said that Molody would complain when the KGB doctors gave him injections for high blood pressure, and that these made him feel much worse, arousing suspicion about his death. Throughout history, professors have suggested that the Portland spy ring was in fact much larger than the 5 who were arrested. Professor Christopher Andrew stated his belief that the staff at the Russian and Polish embassy, who were immune from prosecution, were also involved. He also suggests that the ring may have had more senior members of staff at the Portland Naval Research Facility involved, due to the fact that Houghton and G were very low down the pecking order in terms of power. Overall, the shocking part of the Portland spy ring is the fact those involved were not caught for so long, and the fact that many secrets were leaked. It is estimated that almost 100 documents were passed to the Soviet Union through the Portland spy ring. Another interesting point, however, is how could such a tranquil and quiet part of the southern English coastline be propelled into the limelight for being one of the worst leaks of intelligence information in British history. Once again, thank you for watching The Untold Past. To support the channel, please subscribe and also check out some of the other videos on our channel. Once again, thank you for watching.